I'm going to be doing something different today. If you haven't guessed already, I'm going to be talking about patch 0.42. It's on everyone's mind, and I just wanted to give my own take on it. I think that so far, if you watch my channel, you're probably a medium to more advanced player, and if you're one of those people, I'm guessing you've already read the notes, you've already watched a couple of the videos and maybe engaged in a couple of conversations about the new patch. So I'm not going to disrespect your intelligence and the effort that you've put into it. And I'm going to assume that you're already familiar with a lot of the aspects of the new patch. Especially, I'm hoping that you already know that we've got new sets of gear, because that is the main point of what I'm going to be talking about today. So grab a drink, grab some snacks. I think we might be here for a while. And when this patch came out, the biggest question on my mind was, how important is this patch actually? Is it going to change the way that I play the game? And I think that is the biggest question. Does it change the way that I understand the game? And how life-changing is it for me in the game? And I actually have wanted to talk about the way that I understand and play the game for a while. And now that it has come into kind of danger, I think it is a good way to finally address it. But first of all, let's talk about the gear sets. So this is basically a summary of the gear sets we have, sorted by 2 pieces and 4 pieces, and I've got the name of the set and the aspect, the stat, or the effect that it gives. So for example, for life, I have HP because the life set boosts the HP stat. I hope everyone knew that. So for the new sets, I've just been really simple with it, and I've just said what it does without listing the conditions and the other stuff around it. So like cover is protective shield, untouchable is immunity. A bunch of sets can be distilled to basically giving mana, so I've just written mana. Zeal and Fury are both related to damage, so that's why I've put damage. Rotten is heal block. Vampire is basically heal. Bandit is status removal. Daze is stun. And I think that's it. So I think this is really important because it gives some kind of background to what we are trying to achieve with these new sets. And now that we know kind of what tools are potentially in our toolbox, we're going to go to the fundamental understanding that I have of how I play the game currently, or how I was playing it up until the patch was released. So everything I do comes down to this, that there are basically 5 types of heroes. And I'm going to go through this pretty fast, so maybe you want to re-watch this video. 5 types of heroes, and this is related to the hero categories that they have. So if I look here. Of course, it's going to take a while to load. So you can see in the roles and classes, they have a bunch of things here. I'm not going to go through them, but they have some kind of classification for the heroes. I'm sure you've noticed that some are called assassins or warlocks or whatever. So I just make it very simple. I have 5 types, and these 5 types are based on how a hero is used in the game. So a farmer is used for farming, an attacker is used to deal damage and basically hit the enemy. A debuffer is used to put debuffs on the enemy. I think you know where I'm going with this. The buffer is used to put buffs on the allies, and the defender is like a tanky role that can absorb the damage and is meant to survive. So you can see that, there are kind of similarities and differences and links between these types already, right? So a farmer is also probably an attacker because the farmer needs to do damage as well. Whereas the attacker and the defender are kind of on opposite sides, or that would be the initial feeling, right? Because one is helping you do damage and the defender is helping with survivability. And I think that especially for something like the raid boss, but actually everywhere, the gameplay is a balance between damage and survivability, because you need to survive to do damage, but there's no point in surviving without doing damage, right? So those are kind of 2 ends of a spectrum, you could say. And then you have the debuffer and the buffer, which are also maybe kind of like opposites. So you want to debuff the enemy, but you also want to buff your own team or your own heroes. So this is just kind of how I see it, very simply. For example, like Aurora is going to be a buffer because she gives increased attack and protective shield to everyone. And she could also be a little bit of a defender. So we do see kind of these types that can bleed into each other a little bit, but it's in a way clear for many heroes. Like Aurora is a buffer, Stryborg is a buffer, Zarkon is a debuffer, Freya is an attacker debuffer, Sigil is a buffer, maybe also a defender. Raphael is an attacker. Some people might also use him as a farmer. Mrs. Claus is a debuffer. Martin is a defender. Maharold is an attacker that buffs himself. Cassia is an attacker, and some people use her as a farmer. And her vulnerability makes her also a little bit of a debuffer. So, yeah, that's kind of simply to give a couple of examples. And I think this is a really useful system because all I need to do when I see a hero, a new hero, is to think of how I'm going to use this hero in the game. Like, I got a couple of new heroes recently. I got Durgana, and I'm leveling her. So she heals and she gives increased attack. So that means I'm going to use her as a buffer. Might also use her as a defender, but the buffs are the reason that I'm going to be bringing her in the team. I also got Grimbor recently, and what he does is he hits people, so I'm going to use him as an attacker primarily. And I would say that the advantage of breaking heroes down into these 5 types is really because these 5, each type kind of benefits from a certain way of being geared. So the farmer will benefit from speed, from crit rate, from doing damage, and that's for all farmers. The defender will benefit from lots of HP and lots of defense. That's for all defenders. And for buffers and debuffers, a buffer will want speed, a debuffer will want accuracy and speed. An attacker is a bit like a farmer again, wants crit rate and wants the crit damage as well as whatever the damage is based on. So if it's based on attack, the attacker wants attack. If it's based on defense, the attacker wants defense. If it's HP, they want HP. So it gives a really nice idea of how I'm going to gear a hero, no matter what hero it is. And that's why I'm pretty confident with my gear up until this point, because I can look at a hero and I instantly know what gear they should get for many heroes based on what they are, how I'm going to use them in the game. And then I can go into the hero card and read the passive ability and all of the conditionals that come there, and then I can tweak it a little bit, but the fundamentals are these 5 basic hero types. And now I'm going to go into which of the new effects from the new sets will benefit which types of heroes. So for the farmer, I'm thinking mana to charge quickly and damage. For the attacker, I'm thinking damage, maybe some protective shield and heal. Maybe some protective shield, especially if they're getting targeted in the early stages of the game, and heal block to prevent the enemy from healing after doing the damage. I'm not going to go into explain why, I'm just going to say this is what I think. Otherwise it's going to be a very long video, and I think that there's no real kind of need to go into why. This is just my gut feeling. It could be right, it could be wrong. We will see. The meta will prove itself. But this is based on what these hero roles are, what I think they will benefit from. So the debuffer wants mana to land the debuffs as often as possible. Protective shield and immunity, maybe if there are early targets in the game, especially in PvP. Status removal, because they're going to have that accuracy stat anyway, might as well. Buffer, very similar to debuffer, but loses the status removal effect, because if you're building them as a pure buffer, you haven't got accuracy on them at the moment. And then the defender is exactly the same as the buffer, because in a way their roles are both to survive and do their thing. For the base stats or the other gear sets, the buffer will be faster than the defender on average, but in terms of the new sets, I think they're going to want the same thing. So you can see that most of them will benefit from mana, and kind of the more defensive side will benefit from protective shield and immunity, whereas the farmer and the attacker can go more for damage. The attacker specifically has access to some of the sets that are conditional on doing damage. You'll notice I didn't put stuff like stun, because if it's a pure attacker build, at the moment this person probably does not have any accuracy on them. But we're going to come to that later. And next I want to go through this table I made, and I know the writing is really small, so I'll zoom in for you later. But this is what happens when a hero is more than one type, right? So we're talking about how, for example, a farmer is also partially an attacker, because the farmer also needs to do damage. But we were also talking about how the attacker, the pure attacker, doesn't have sets like stun because they don't have accuracy yet. But guess who will have a bit of accuracy? It will be the attackers who also do a bit of debuffs. So this is really kind of mapping out the primary type and the secondary type. And obviously there can be more than 2 types that a hero is associated with. I did not want to go completely insane, so I just did 2 types and what kind of effects they might benefit from, and an example for each one. But yeah, obviously you can have people who are 3 types as well. Like, for example, Freya would be an attacker, debuffer, and potentially a little bit of defender, right? Or Sophia would be something similar, but I don't have Sophia. So if we look at this, I'll zoom in and we can look at the pure builds first. So for the farmer, the pure build is basically what I had on the previous page. I'm going to show you an example. I'm going to show you Sif. So, you know, her mana gain is already 25, but I think it would be super awesome if she could actually charge partially at the beginning of the battle, or in case I don't get the tiles, or if she was fully charged at the beginning of the battle, and that would be really cool. And that would work, I think, especially well with someone like Soliana, in fact, who already gains 50 mana if you max her passive. So you could put 2 mana sets on her and she'd just start every wave with 100 mana, and then you basically don't have to even care what you're doing, because she's just going to finish the battle in like 5 seconds with 100% success rate. But yeah, so this is my example of Civ. So she's got a bit of speed, a bit of crit rate, crit damage, attack, nothing special, but maybe a bit of mana would be alright. If she's doing okay with the damage at the moment, but if her damage was not enough, could use one of the damage sets to boost that. And so for the pure attacker, I have Pan as an example. So I think she's already hitting okay. By the way, these heroes that I'm showing, they're not all maxed or dusted, or some of their gear is not the best. So just using them and as an example, I know that sometimes their builds are suboptimal. Yeah, so Pan, I think that she is a good hero for doing damage, and it would be really cool if maybe, I'm thinking she could do more damage, or in war, if someone is going to target her first, then Protective Shield could be good at the start of the battle. Heal can also be good, because for a very hard hitter, then it's nice to heal back what she's done, and heal block, obviously, on the enemy can also be good. Debuffer, I have Mrs. Claus here as my example. So she's already got some speed and accuracy, but I think that some more mana could be good if she would be able to fire at the start of the battle. I know that we have heroes now like Astra who will remove statuses at the beginning of the wave anyway. But this is one example. It doesn't have to be Mrs. Claus, right? Another debuffer could be like Mayra. I think is a very good example of a hero that actually does damage, but is often built as a pure debuffer type. but since Mera is almost exclusively geared towards raid bosses and probably almost exclusively used on raid bosses, maybe also the rifts. I haven't really put her here. I'm not sure she would really benefit from some of these sets. Maybe the mana one, if I really wanted to charge her very early in the battle and save some of the mana potions on the raid boss. But yeah, back to Mrs. Claus. So we have, if she's a target in the early stages of the battle, then I think Protective Shield and Immunity could be good on her. If she does status removal with her tiles, that's also neat. Remember, this doesn't have to be Mrs. Claus, it could be anyone. Right? So it could be, I don't know. It could be Zarkon, for example. Right, so if you could have Zarkon that removes statuses and then his special does something different, that could be kind of cool. Obviously, there are disadvantages to that as well, because you can only do tiles on one hero at a time. So think about it. Think about how you will actually do these in practice. So next for the buffer, I have Hempa. Where is she? So here, I think mana would be good to get the buffs up. Protective Shield, Immunity, if she's a target at the start of the battle. Basically all I have to say, kind of repeating myself at this point, because I went through this already. The Defender example, Martin. So it's the same thing. We want mana to get him to charge quickly. We can have Protective Shield and Immunity to protect him a little bit. So that's Martin. Now we go to the interesting part, which is the other types. So we now have, I need to zoom out. So we have secondary types on the top. So the first one I have here is a farmer attacker. And I put Frida down because I've tried to make the examples as exactly matching these two types as possible, not one of the heroes with the three types. And I think, yeah, for the farmer attacker, it's basically the same as the farmer. Basically, the difference between a pure farmer and a farmer attacker would be that you use the pure farmer exclusively for farming, and then the farmer attacker maybe has additional utility elsewhere. Probably does more damage than the pure farmer. For example, I don't use Civ anywhere other than farming. And so we have Frida. I do not actually have an equipped Frida, I don't think, but I do have this handy tool. So this is telling me actually her scores here are the same. I made this as a tool to kind of do all of the calculation, the interpolation between mixed types, but what you can see is she's got a high farmer and attacker score, and then she wants crit rate gloves, attack percent chest, speed boots if I'm building her as a farmer attacker, right? Crit damage is good to do more damage. More mana is good to charge quickly, and fire, that's basically the kind of stats that I would be looking to put on Frida. And then if I wanted to give her the new sets, I could put a bit of mana and damage on her, and that's that's Frida. Then we go to the farmer debuffer. I can show you Soliana for this one. It's a bit funny because I use Soliana as my farmer, but I found that she's actually really useful everywhere. And I'm appreciating the chance to land burn with her. So that has made her a farmer debuffer in my eyes. For others, Altan could be a good guy for this role, because the defense down is very important, but you're mainly using him to kill all of the enemies at once, so that would also make him a farmer debuffer. So yeah, I think that since she already has a little bit of accuracy, it would be really nice if she could land stun. That's probably not for the farming, because she can kill everyone with one time of her special, but in other applications I think that stun could be useful. Then we come to the attacker buffers and the farmer buffers and the farmer defenders. Haven't really found any examples of heroes in the game who might fulfill this kind of role. If you can think of one, please let me know. I haven't so far, but if in the future they would release someone who would fulfill this kind of role, I think they would both benefit from mana, and you will see that everyone in the farmer category has benefited from mana so far, and the defender could probably benefit from heal as well to regain a little bit of that lost HP from, because the farmer gets attacked if all of the feeders die when you go farming, and so maybe a bit of heal could be useful. Right, so next let's go to attacker, and then I'll save the other three for the next part of this video because this is already really long. So the attacker type, we already did Pan. Now we're gonna do Raphael. So the difference between a farmer attacker and an attacker farmer is that the attacker farmer is primarily used to do damage, and as you know, a secondary kind of thing, you might want to use them as a farmer. So I think Claws also is a good example of an attacker farmer. Basically any AoE can be an attacker farmer if you want to. It can also be built as pure attackers just to confuse you. I personally build Raphael as an attacker because I don't use him in farming. But here I think what could be nice is more damage would be cool. If he could heal for the damage that he does. Actually, he does this already, so if you look at his passive, he'll recover HP this based on the damage he deals. So but it would be nice if everyone could do this, because I've seen that this is sometimes the make or break in arena battles. I'll have tiled him almost to death, and then he'll charge, and then he'll regain all of that back, and then I'm just sitting there over the next few turns dying. So I think this is a really good this could be a really good set on an AoE. Heal block could be nice if he could also give everyone heal block. That would really make me swear, I think, if I saw that in arena. Mana I think is always nice. I could either increase my mana gain here, or I could use a mana set to partially charge him, so that's how he would benefit from that. And I've put stun in brackets because if I really wanted to, this would push him into a attacker farmer debuffer type, right? But so I everything that would push them into 3 types I've put in brackets. So stun would be really sweet on this guy, I think. So next we go to attacker debuffer. And again, I'm sorry for going through this pretty quickly. So there's a lot of ground to cover. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. So an attacker debuffer could be Savior. What is his debuff? He lands Curse on the enemy, supposedly. I'm not sure about his success rate on the raid boss personally. But that's my own grumble. So I think that if he would do more damage, that would be good. If he could put heal block with his special, that would be also really cool. Nice thing about Savior, and I'm not sure it was useful for me to choose the heroes with the passives that support this already, but he has an increase in accuracy provided by his passive ability. So that means that I could actually just build him as a pure attacker, or I could put more, as I have done now, or I could put more accuracy on him, and give him a little bit more. Actually, I think I lied. I do have a bit of accuracy on him somewhere. Yeah. A very little bit of accuracy on this guy, and another one here. So you do see some accuracy substats, and then he'll get more from his passive. And then that will really help him if I want to put the heal block set on him, the status removal set, maybe the stun set. And again, mana is always nice because the more you fire, the more you can either do damage or land the debuffs that come with the special. So that was Savior for the attacker debuffer. We got 2 left. The attacker buffer and the attacker defender. To be honest, it's really hard to find a person who is primarily an attacker who buffs everyone. Usually they just buff themselves. So I've put Ketra here. I think she's the prime example of someone who buffs herself as well. I know I could do better on her gear and get her defense up a little bit more. She's not fully dusted either, but I think that she's good in that she buffs herself. So I think the damage is really nice. The damage is something that everyone who is primarily an attacker will have in common. And the protective shield, it could be nice. It depends on the buff that this hero gives, right? So maybe in future if they release a hero that buffs something else, or a current hero like Lancelot, I think he gains increase attack, increase critical chance, or something like this. So he might be weak, and protective shield could help him. He also, actually, why don't we go to him? He also does more damage for every status affecting him. So this is why I didn't show him, because his gear is terrible. So damage is increased by 5% for every status affecting him. So maybe if his protective shield would last longer, he might even do more damage because of that. Heal is also nice on any attacker, and heal block the same. And for the attacker defender, I have Torbjorn. So I chose him because he's based on HP, and that means he's pretty sturdy. To be honest, Ketra can also make this category because with her increased defense, she's also potentially a bit of a defender as well. But I wanted to have 2 different examples. So this is Torbjorn, and he also has a little bit of res. so that's nice. I think someone like can't remember his name now, but the red version of him will gain some HP for the damage that he does. So this is all kind of fitting very well into the attacker defender concept. And more damage would be nice because these guys who are usually more tanky do a little bit less damage. Shield can make him even more hard to deal with, especially at the beginning. Healing himself, heal block, it's the same, so I won't repeat it. That basically brings me to the end of these first two rows, the farmer and the attackers. And just to give you a little bit of a break, I'm gonna end this now, and we're gonna catch up on the last 3 rows in the next part. So stay tuned, and I'll see you in the next one.